Emma Hart stood at Union Station at precisely 3:47 p.m., her two carefully packed suitcases at her feet, watching the crowd for David's familiar figure. The afternoon light streamed through the massive windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and her heart lifted. Finally, he was here. The text message was brief, brutal, final. "I can't do this. I'm sorry. Don't wait for me." The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering against the polished stone. Around her, the station continued its indifferent rhythm. Travelers rushed past with rolling luggage. A child cried somewhere nearby. The departure board flickered, updating destinations she would never reach. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Emma sank onto a wooden bench, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. 5 years. 5 years of accommodating his schedule, his career moves, his family's expectations. She had turned down the gallery showcase in Cleveland, her first real opportunity to show her artwork, because David needed her support during his bar exam. She had spent countless evenings alone while he worked late, convincing herself that patience was love. Her phone buzzed again. Not David. Aunt Bertie. "He left me," Emma whispered into the phone, her voice breaking. At the train station, everyone's staring. Aunt Bertie's voice came through steady and warm. "Sometimes the universe removes what's wrong to make room for what's right, darling. Sit tight. Breathe." But breathing felt impossible. A group of teenagers had noticed her, their phones raised, capturing her humiliation for their social media feeds. One boy laughed loud enough for her to hear. Runaway bride vibes. Nobody wanted her. Emma turned her face away, clutching her bags tighter. She wanted to disappear, to dissolve into the marble beneath her feet. Instead, she remained frozen, a spectacle of abandonment in a place designed for departures. Across the vast hall, Julian Cross stepped off the regional train from Boston, his expensive suit rumpled from travel, his mind still reeling from Dr. Ramon's words that morning. Inoperable. 4 to 6 weeks. "I'm so sorry, Julian." He had come to Union Station seeking anonymity, needing to be somewhere no one knew his name or his diagnosis. But as he crossed the main terminal, his attention snagged on a woman sitting alone on a bench, her shoulders curved inward, her face streaked with tears. Something about her posture, defeated yet somehow still dignified, made him pause. Julian watched as strangers pointed, as phones captured her pain. He recognized that particular species of cruelty, the way public spaces turned private grief into entertainment. His chest tightened with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Without fully understanding why, he began walking toward her. Julian's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower that pierced the Chicago skyline. Emma stood in the entrance, her worn suitcases looking absurd against the backdrop of polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows. The space was stunning and sterile, more architectural magazine than home. "Your suite is on the 2nd level," Julian said, his voice carefully neutral. He had explained his proposition at the station with businesslike precision. 30 days. His mother's bucket list. $100,000. No questions asked about why a billionaire needed a stranger's company for his final month. Emma had said yes because she had nowhere else to go, because the humiliation at the station had stripped away her last reserves of pride, because something in Julian's gray eyes suggested he understood what it meant to be fundamentally alone. Frank Kowalski appeared in the doorway, a burly man in his 60s with kind eyes and weathered hands. "I'll take your bags, miss," he said, his Chicago accent thick and comforting. To Julian, he added quietly, "You sure about this, boss?" Julian didn't answer. He was already setting up his laptop at the dining table, pulling up documents. Within minutes, Emma found herself staring at a formal contract, pages of legal language outlining confidentiality agreements, compensation terms, and a schedule of activities to be completed. "You want me to sign this?" Emma said flatly. "It protects us both." Julian's fingers drummed against the table, the only sign of his nervousness. "You're under no obligation. But if you agree, I need to know you'll see this through." Emma scanned the pages, her graphic design background making her naturally detail-oriented. The compensation was more than she'd earned in 2 years. The requirements seemed simple enough. Accompany him to family visits, help complete a list of experiences, Maintain discretion about his health. Why me? She asked. You could hire anyone. Someone professional. Julian looked up then, really looked at her. Because everyone I know wants something from me. You're the first person in years who seems to want nothing at all. The doorbell chimed. Dr. Sophia Ramon entered without waiting for permission, her medical bag in hand, and concern etched across her face. She was elegant and direct, her dark eyes assessing Emma with immediate skepticism. Julian, a word, she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. Their voices carried despite the attempt at privacy. This is reckless, Dr. Ramon hissed. She's a stranger. You're dying. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I have 30 days to complete a promise I made to my mother, Julian replied, his voice tight. I'm thinking I've wasted enough time. Emma stood, contract in hand, feeling like an intruder in this sterile palace. She wandered toward the windows, looking out at the city stretching below. Behind her, she heard Dr. Ramon's resigned sigh, Frank's quiet attempts at mediation. In the far corner of the penthouse, Emma noticed a door, the only one that looked anything other than modern and impersonal. Its wood was old, its handle brass and worn smooth by hands. That was my mother's study, Julian said, suddenly beside her. It's locked. Has been for 8 years. Emma turned to find him holding a leather-bound notebook. This is her list. The things she wanted me to do before. He didn't finish the sentence. Item 1. Reconcile with my sister Maggie. We haven't spoken in 3 years. Why not? Emma asked. Because I'm very good at building walls and very bad at tearing them down. He handed her the notebook. Inside, his mother's handwriting was elegant and fading. 10 items, each one a small rebellion against the sterile life her son had built. Emma read them slowly. Learn to cook. Visit the ocean at sunrise. Create something with your hands. And there, crossed out with heavy black ink, fall in love. You crossed this one out, she observed. I'm not capable of that anymore, Julian said simply. My ex-wife made that abundantly clear. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and saw beneath the expensive suit and controlled demeanor to the exhausted man underneath. She thought about David, about years of making herself smaller, about standing in that train station with nowhere to go. When do we start? She asked, signing the contract with a flourish. Frank appeared with fresh coffee and something that might have been a smile. Tomorrow morning, miss. But tonight, you should rest. You've had one hell of a day. As Emma followed him toward her suite, she glanced back at Julian. He stood at the window, silhouetted against the dying light, looking more alone than anyone she'd ever seen. Perhaps, she thought, they were both lost enough to find each other. The drive to Connecticut took 3 hours. Emma sat in the back of Julian's sedan, watching him pretend to work on his laptop while his leg bounced with nervous energy. Frank drove in characteristic silence, occasionally catching Emma's eye in the rearview mirror with expressions that seemed to say, "This should be interesting." Maggie Cross's veterinary practice sat on 5 acres of rolling farmland, the kind of place where healing happened quietly. The barn-style building was painted cheerful red, and the property teemed with life. Horses in distant paddocks, a goat bleating somewhere, chickens pecking at the gravel drive. Julian stared at the building like it might bite him. "We can turn around," Emma offered quietly. "No." His voice was firm. "I've run from this long enough." The clinic's front door was locked. Julian knocked, then knocked again. Through the window, Emma could see movement, someone deliberately ignoring them. "Maggie," Julian called out. "I know you're in there. Please, go away, Julian." The voice that came through the door was raw with old hurt. "I don't have anything to say to you. I have something to say to you." He pressed his palm against the door. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For not being there when Mom died. For choosing work over family. For becoming exactly what she warned me not to be." Silence. Then footsteps. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her mid-30s, her dark hair in a messy bun, her scrubs covered in animal hair and what looked like mud. Maggie Cross had Julian's sharp cheekbones, but warmer eyes currently blazing with fury. "You're sorry," she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. 3 years of silence, and now you're sorry. Do you have any idea? Her voice cracked. Do you have any idea what it was like? Sitting with her every day while the cancer ate her alive? Calling you, begging you to come home, while you were in some boardroom making your next billion. Julian flinched as if she'd struck him. "You're right. I was a coward. You were absent." Maggie's composure shattered. She asked for you at the end. She kept asking when you'd arrive. And I had to tell her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I had to tell her you were too busy. Emma watched Julian crumble. His carefully constructed walls fell away, leaving only a man confronting his deepest failure. I was too afraid, he whispered. I couldn't watch her die. I couldn't be that powerless. So you made me be alone with it, Maggie said. You made me carry all of it while you hid behind your company. I did. Julian's voice broke. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. Maggie's attention suddenly shifted to Emma. And who the hell are you? Another assistant? Another pretty face to make him look human? Emma stepped forward, surprising herself with her steadiness. I'm Emma. We met 3 days ago at a train station. I was abandoned by my fiancé, and your brother offered me a deal, help him complete your mother's bucket list, and he'd help me start over. Maggie's laugh was bitter. Jesus, Julian. You're actually trying to buy your way through Mom's list. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. No. Julian's voice gained strength. I'm dying, Maggie. I have a brain tumor. Inoperable. The doctors give me 4 to 6 weeks. The words hung in the air like a punch that hadn't quite landed. Maggie went very still, her face cycling through disbelief, horror, and grief in rapid succession. What? The word came out small, broken. I found out 3 days ago, Julian continued. And the first thing I thought was that I'd wasted everything that mattered. I've spent my whole life running from feelings, and now I'm out of time to make it right. Maggie's fury collapsed into something more devastating. She stumbled backward, gripping the doorframe. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to show up dying and expect. I don't expect anything, Julian interrupted gently. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. That you were right about everything. And that I love you, even though I was too broken to show it. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of hurt and the terrible mathematics of limited time. Finally, Maggie's radio crackled. Dr. Cross, we have an emergency. Mare down in the north paddock. Maggie wiped her eyes roughly. I have to. Can we help? Emma asked. Maggie looked at her, then at Julian, then back at the radio in her hand. Do either of you know anything about horses? No, Julian admitted. Then come learn. The next 3 hours were a blur of physical labor. Helping Maggie stabilize a pregnant mare with a difficult delivery, fetching supplies, holding lights, offering whatever assistance 2 city dwellers could manage. Julian's expensive suit got ruined. Emma's hands blistered. But working together towards something concrete, something living, created a bridge where words had failed. When the foal finally arrived, wet, wobbly, perfect, Maggie sat back in the straw and laughed through her tears. Mom would have loved this, she said quietly. You, covered in placenta, actually useful for once. Julian laughed too, the sound rusty from disuse. She always said work that doesn't get your hands dirty isn't real work. That night, they sat on Maggie's porch, drinking cheap beer and talking in fits and starts. Maggie shared memories Julian had forgotten. Their mother singing while cooking, her terrible jokes, the way she'd insisted that success meant nothing if you ended up alone. I'm still angry, Maggie finally said. Forgiveness isn't instant just because you're dying. I know, Julian replied. But I don't want to waste what's left being angry. She reached over and squeezed his hand. So let's figure out how to be siblings again. As Emma watched them, these 2 wounded people trying to rebuild something precious, she felt her own heart beginning to thaw. Maybe healing was possible. Maybe it was never too late to choose differently. On the drive home, Julian fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted but more peaceful than Emma had yet seen him. Frank caught her eye in the mirror. You did good today, miss, he said quietly. Emma looked at Julian's sleeping face, so much younger without the weight of his walls. So did he, she replied. The farmers' market occupied 6 blocks of downtown Chicago every Saturday, a riot of color and sound and life that Julian had somehow never noticed in 15 years of living in the city. Emma had insisted they go. Item 3 on his mother's list was learn to cook a meal from scratch, and she'd pointed out they needed ingredients first. You've really never been to a farmer's market? Emma asked, watching Julian eye a vegetable stand with the wariness of someone approaching alien technology. I have people for this, he said, then caught himself. Had people. Professional shoppers. That's genuinely sad. Emma picked up a tomato, held it to her nose, and inhaled deeply. Smell this. This is what food is supposed to smell like. Julian mimicked her gesture awkwardly. The tomatoes smelled like earth and sunshine, nothing like the pristine produce that appeared in his kitchen. It's good. It's amazing. Emma's laugh was unguarded, the first time he'd heard it. Come on, billionaire. Time to learn what normal people do on Saturdays. What followed was an education in the mundane magic Julian had missed while building his empire. Emma taught him to select vegetables by feel, to banter with vendors, to sample honey from a local beekeeper who didn't recognize him and therefore treated him like any other customer. For the first time in years, Julian was anonymous. Not Julian Cross, CEO. Not the billionaire philanthropist. Just a man buying groceries with a woman who made everything seem lighter. They bought far too much. Heirloom tomatoes, fresh pasta, basil that smelled like summer, crusty bread from a baker who told them his grandfather's recipe. Emma chose flowers, bright sunflowers that seemed to glow against the gray city backdrop. These will make your place feel less like a morgue, she said, then winced. Sorry, that was accurate, Julian finished. My ex-wife said the same thing. That living with me was like inhabiting a beautiful mausoleum. Emma was quiet for a moment. Why did you marry her? Because she was appropriate. Because my father approved. Because I thought love was supposed to be a logical decision. He paused at a stall selling fresh bread. I was wrong about everything that mattered. Back at the penthouse, they attempted to cook. It went poorly. Frank watched from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, as Julian managed to burn water. Emma had more aptitude but limited experience. Her mother had worked too many jobs to teach her elaborate cooking. Between them, they created something close to a disaster. How did you burn the pasta? Emma demanded, staring at the pot. I don't know. The instructions were unclear. The instructions were boil water, add pasta. Frank's laugh rumbled through the kitchen. All right, you two. Step aside. My Magda, God rest her soul, taught me a few things about cooking. Let me show you how it's done. What followed was a master class from a man whose hands had learned to cook because love required it. Frank taught them to taste as they went, to trust their instincts, to understand that cooking was more about feeling than following recipes. He told stories about his late wife, how she'd insisted on cooking together every Sunday, how she'd believed that food made with care tasted different than food made with obligation. She used to say, Frank murmured, stirring the sauce, that you put yourself into what you cook. If you're angry, the food tastes bitter. If you're happy, it tastes like joy. Julian watched Emma working beside him, her hair escaping its tie, flowers somehow on her cheek. She was humming. Unconsciously, something tuneless but content. When had she started feeling comfortable enough to hum? They ate together at Julian's massive dining table. Frank, Emma, and Julian, with the sunflowers Emma had bought as a centerpiece. The pasta wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The sauce had too much garlic. The bread was slightly burned on one side. It was the best meal Julian could remember eating. Your mother would be proud, Frank said quietly, raising his glass of water in a toast. Not because it's perfect, but because you made it. That night, Julian experienced his first noticeable symptom. He was holding a wine glass, telling Emma about his first failed business venture, when his hand suddenly tremored. The glass tilted, wine sloshing onto the expensive table. Sorry, he said quickly, grabbing a napkin. Clumsy. But Emma had seen. Her eyes met his with dawning understanding. Julian. Just tired, he deflected. It's been a long day. Later, after Emma had gone to her suite and Frank had left for the evening, Dr. Sophia Ramon arrived for her scheduled check-in. She found Julian on the terrace, staring out at the city lights. You're progressing faster than we hoped, she said without preamble, reviewing his latest scan results on her tablet. The tremors will increase. You might have 3 weeks of relative functionality, not 4. Don't tell Emma. Julian. Please, Sophia. He turned to face her. If she knows, she'll start treating me like I'm dying. And right now, for the first time in years, someone's treating me like I'm actually living. Sophia studied her old friend, seeing something in him she hadn't seen since their MIT days. A spark, a vitality that had nothing to do with achievement and everything to do with connection. 3 weeks, she said finally. Then I'm telling her the truth. She deserves to know what's coming. After Sophia left, Julian sat alone with his secret and his terror. The clock was ticking faster than anyone knew. He needed to accelerate the bucket list, needed to fit a lifetime of meaning into rapidly shrinking days. But for tonight, he'd cooked a meal from scratch. He'd bought flowers at a farmer's market. He'd learned that anonymity could be a gift, and that simple moments contained more joy than any business triumph. His mother had been right about everything. The Hampton estate loomed against the gray Atlantic sky, all weathered stone and manicured gardens that looked beautiful and felt cold. Julian sat in the back of the car, his hand clasped tightly in Emma's, trying to control his breathing. "We can turn around," Emma offered for the third time. "No." His voice was steady despite the tremor in his hand. "I've avoided this long enough." Harrison Cross stood on the front steps as they arrived, his posture military straight, his silver hair perfectly combed. At 70, he was still imposing, a man who'd built empires through sheer will and expected his son to do the same. He wore a cardigan that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Julian." The greeting was formal, cold as handshake at a business meeting. His eyes flicked to Emma. "And this is Emma Hart," Julian said. "She's important to me." Harrison's eyebrow raised fractionally, the closest he came to showing surprise. "I see. Well, come in. I've had lunch prepared." The dining room was exactly as Julian remembered, oppressively elegant, with oil paintings of stern ancestors watching from the walls. They sat at a table meant for 12, the three of them clustered at one end like strangers at a networking event. Conversation was painful. Harrison asked about the company. Julian gave brief answers. Harrison mentioned his new wife was traveling in Europe. Julian said nothing. The silence between words screamed louder than any argument. Finally, Julian set down his fork with deliberate care. "I'm dying, Father." Harrison froze, his water glass halfway to his lips. "What?" "Brain tumor. Inoperable. I have a few weeks, maybe a month." Julian's voice didn't waver. "And before I go, I need to have one honest conversation with you. Just one. No performance. No business talk. Just truth." "Julian, if this is about experimental treatments." "It's not." Julian leaned forward. "It's about why, in 38 years, you've never once told me you loved me." The words fell into the room like grenades. Harrison's face went rigid, his jaw working as if chewing stones. "That's not fair," Harrison said finally. "I gave you everything. The best schools, opportunities, capital to start your company. You gave me money," Julian interrupted. "Not yourself. Never yourself. What did you want?" Harrison's voice rose, real emotion cracking through his control. "Should I have coddled you? Made you soft? I wanted you to come to my high school graduation instead of sending your assistant with a check. I wanted you to let me cry at Mom's funeral without calling me pathetic. I wanted," Julian's voice broke. "I wanted you to see me as your son, not your project." Harrison stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I raised you the way my father raised me. It made us strong. It made us alone." Julian stood too, facing his father across the expensive table. "I became exactly like you, Dad. Cold, focused, successful. And I lost everything that mattered because I didn't know how to be anything else. I lost my marriage. I lost years with my sister. I built an empire on the ruins of my relationships." "That's the price of success," Harrison said, but his voice had lost its conviction. Emma, who had been silent throughout, suddenly spoke. "My father worked 3 factory jobs and still made it to my school plays. He didn't have money to give me, but he gave me himself. That's what Julian needed. That's what all children need." Harrison turned his attention to her, some emotion flickering across his face. Shame? Regret? Before his walls slammed back up. "You don't understand our world," he said dismissively. "I understand loss," Emma replied quietly. "And I understand that you're about to lose your son. Really lose him. Forever. And the only question that will matter after he's gone is whether you were brave enough to be honest with him before the end." The silence stretched taut as a wire. Harrison's hands shook slightly, the first sign of vulnerability Julian had seen in years. "I don't know how," Harrison finally said. The words dragged from somewhere deep. "After your mother died, grief made me hard. I thought showing emotion was weakness. My father beat it out of me, and He stopped, struggling. "I was proud of you. I am proud of you. Watching you succeed was the only way I knew how to feel." "That's not love," Julian said, but his voice was gentler now. "That's vicarious achievement." "I know." Harrison's voice was barely audible. "I know I failed you. I failed Maggie too. I failed your mother by becoming exactly what she begged me not to be. He met Julian's eyes finally, and there was real pain there. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to be different, even now. Julian felt something inside him crack and release. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. His father was as trapped by his own damage as Julian had been. The difference was that Julian still had time to choose differently. I don't need you to fix it, Julian said. I just needed you to be honest. To admit it. They stood there, father and son, separated by decades of withheld emotion and a table that might as well have been an ocean. Slowly, Harrison extended his hand. Not a hug. He still couldn't manage that. But a handshake that held more weight than any business deal they'd ever discussed. Julian took his father's hand and held it firmly. Not a reconciliation. Not absolution. But acknowledgement. Truth. It would have to be enough. Later, Emma found Julian in the estate's rose garden, sitting on a weathered bench where his mother used to tend her flowers. He was crying, great, heaving sobs that shook his entire frame. Emma sat beside him without speaking, pulling him against her shoulder. She held him while he grieved not just his impending death, but all the years of seeking love from someone who didn't know how to give it. All the ways he'd become his father's son. All the time he'd wasted being everything except himself. I spent my whole life trying to earn his approval, Julian finally said, his voice wrecked. And it was never about me. It was always about his own pain that he couldn't process. I know, Emma whispered, stroking his hair. I know. I don't want to die like him. Cold. Alone. Having never really let anyone in. Emma pulled back to look at him, her hands framing his face. You're not him, Julian. You're learning. You're trying. That's what matters. From an upper window, Harrison cross-watched them. His son, held by a woman who clearly loved him, finally allowing himself to be vulnerable in a way Harrison never had. A single tear traced down his weathered cheek before he turned away, unable to witness what he himself had never achieved. On the drive back to Chicago, Emma's hand found Julian's in the darkness of the back seat. Neither spoke, but the connection said what words couldn't. I see you. I'm here. You're not alone. Frank caught Emma's eyes in the rearview mirror and nodded slightly. The message was clear. Thank you for giving him this. For being brave enough to stand in his pain. Julian fell asleep against Emma's shoulder, exhausted by emotion and the disease eating at his brain. Emma stayed awake, watching the highway lights streak past, holding this complicated, broken, beautiful man as he slept. She was falling in love with him. She could feel it happening, inevitable as gravity. And the knowledge terrified her because loving Julian meant losing Julian, and she'd had enough loss to last a lifetime. But sitting there in the darkness, his weight against her, his hand in hers, Emma made a choice. Some things were worth the pain that would follow. Some people deserve to be loved fully, even if that love had an expiration date. She pressed a kiss to his temple and whispered words he couldn't hear. I'm with you. Whatever comes, I'm with you. Behind the wheel, Frank smiled sadly, knowing exactly what that whisper meant and what it would cost her. The photograph went viral overnight. Someone at the farmer's market had captured Julian and Emma laughing over a tomato stand, their faces unguarded and genuinely happy. The caption read, "Billionaire tech mogul Julian Cross with mysterious new girlfriend?" Emma's phone exploded with notifications. Old friends, distant relatives, and David. He appeared at Julian's building 3 days later with Lauren beside him, both dressed in business casual that screamed calculated effort. Frank intercepted them in the lobby, but Emma agreed to come down. David said, his smile practiced and warm. I've been so worried about you. We need to talk about everything. Lauren's eyes assessed Emma's designer clothes, gifts from Julian, with barely concealed disdain. We just want to make sure you're okay, that you're not being taken advantage of. Emma felt Julian's presence before she saw him, emerging from the elevator with the cold authority of a man protecting what mattered. David Chun, Julian said, his voice cordial and dangerous. I've heard a lot about you. None of it flattering. David's charm faltered. He tried to bond, man to man, understanding the complications of relationships. Julian dismantled him with surgical precision, mentioning David's family's financial troubles, his affair, his pattern of using people. Emma deserves better than being someone's backup plan, Julian said flatly. Emma stepped forward. I'm not interested, David. For the first time in years, someone actually sees me. You never did. David's mask cracked. You're just another gold digger. He'll get bored. The difference, Emma interrupted, her voice steady, is that he sees me. You only saw what I could do for you. After they left, Emma and Julian retreated to the terrace. Wine. Silence. The city glittering below. I wanted to hit him, Julian admitted. I know. Emma smiled. Thank you for not. Emma, he stopped, the words catching. I'm falling for you. But saying it felt cruel when death was already circling. Emma leaned closer, her lips nearly touching his, then pulled back, fear winning over desire. The moment hung between them, electric and unfulfilled. The seizure happened at 3 a.m. Emma heard the crash and found Julian on the bathroom floor, convulsing, eyes rolled back. Her screams brought Frank running. Dr. Rahman arrived within 20 minutes. It's progressing faster, Sophia told Emma quietly while Julian slept under sedation. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Then rapid decline. Emma made her decision. We finished the list. All of it. The mural project brought them to a community center in Julian's foundation's territory. Emma, Julian, Frank, Maggie, and a dozen local kids gathered with paint and brushes. Among them was Riley Park, 12 years old and cancer-worn, but smiling. What matters isn't how long you live, Riley told Julian, her wisdom impossibly old. It's making beautiful things for people to remember. They painted all day, a tree of life with branches holding symbols of hope. Julian painted himself and Maggie as children on a swing. Emma added 2 birds in flight holding a banner, "We were here." At sunset, sitting before their completed work, Julian wept. It's the first thing I've made that's truly mine. That night, another episode struck. Emma stayed, holding his hand through the darkness, reading to him, refusing to leave despite his protests. I don't want to leave you, Julian whispered, half-conscious. Emma pressed her lips to his forehead. I don't want you to go, but neither had a choice. Time was a thief that couldn't be reasoned with. Maine's coast waited gray and magnificent. Julian was weak, requiring frequent medication stops, but determined. The inn was small and quiet, the kind of place where strangers didn't ask questions. They sat on the porch through the night, wrapped in blankets, talking about everything, childhoods, regrets, dreams that would never materialize. I'm terrified, Julian confessed, of the moment I stop being me. When the illness takes my mind and you watch me disappear. I'm terrified that loving you will break me, Emma replied. But not loving you would be worse. At dawn, they walked to the beach. Frank followed at a distance, giving them space. As the sun painted the horizon gold and pink, Julian spoke. I'm in love with you, Emma Hart. I'm sorry it took dying to learn how to live. I'm sorry loving me means losing me. Emma's tears came freely. I love you, Julian Cross. And I'm not sorry. Not for one moment. Their kiss tasted like salt and sunrise, like endings and beginnings tangled together. Behind them, Frank wiped his eyes, witnessing love choosing itself despite impossible odds. Back at the inn, Julian revealed his plans, trust funds, gallery space, connections to launch her art career. Emma was angry at first. I don't want your money. I want you. I need to know you'll keep living, Julian said. That my death won't destroy you. They spent the day at the ocean's edge, talking, crying, laughing. They made love with desperate tenderness, knowing time was measured in days now. You taught me how to really live, Julian whispered. I'll live enough for both of us, Emma promised. I swear. The penthouse transformed. Flowers everywhere. Emma's artwork on the walls. Music playing softly. Maggie moved in. Aunt Bertie arrived from Brooklyn, taking one look at Emma and understanding everything. Dr. Rahman established hospice care. Julian had good hours and terrible ones. During lucid periods, they danced in the living room, Frank teaching them steps while everyone cried and laughed simultaneously. Riley visited, bringing drawings. You're going to be in my heart forever, she told Julian, her small hand in his. Julian wrote letters to Emma, one for each week of the first year, then monthly. A gift of continued presence. Emma documented everything in sketches and photographs, creating a memorial from love. The goodbyes came in waves. To Frank, you were my family when I had none. To Maggie, you were right about everything. I love you. To Aunt Bertie, thank you for raising a woman brave enough to love a dying man. His final lucid evening, Julian asked for time alone with Emma. In his mother's sanctuary, they said everything that mattered. I need to say goodbye while I'm still me, he whispered. I'll know you, Emma promised. Even if you don't know me. Every version of you. They exchanged final promises. He made her swear to have her gallery show, to keep creating, to let herself love again someday. She promised to visit Riley, stay connected to Maggie, live fully enough to honor what they'd shared. Thank you for teaching me how to live, Julian said, his last fully coherent words. Emma held him through the night as he drifted away, piece by piece. 3 days later, with Emma's hand in his, Julian Cross took his final breath as dawn broke. The funeral was intimate despite Julian's public profile. Emma delivered a eulogy that was raw and honest. He spent his life building an empire, but he spent his death building a soul. I'm grateful I witnessed both. The will revealed his provisions, foundation resources, Maggie's inheritance, Frank's retirement, Emma's trust, and gallery space. Emma moved into his mother's sanctuary, unable to live in the main penthouse without him. She opened his letters on schedule. Each one offered comfort, memories, permission to move forward. Grief came in waves. Some days she functioned. Some days she couldn't leave bed. Aunt Bertie stayed, anchoring her through the worst. Emma visited Riley weekly. They created art together, talking about Julian and living. She painted seriously again, developing her 30 Days of Living collection. 6 months later, her gallery show opened. The space Julian had arranged filled with her work. Paintings of the station, the mural, the sunrise, hands intertwined. Maggie, Frank, Dr. Ramon, Aunt Bertie, and Riley attended. Critics praised its unflinching honesty about love and mortality. One painting sold for a substantial amount. Emma donated the proceeds to the Children's Hospital in Julian and Riley's names. 1 year after meeting Julian, Emma returned to Union Station. She opened his final letter. You were never the train I caught at the station. You were the destination I was always meant to find. Keep going, Emma. Keep living. Keep creating. And when you're ready, let yourself be loved again. You deserve everything. Emma cried, gratitude mixed with grief. A train arrived. She stood, shoulders back, and boarded it. Not running this time. Moving forward. Her voiceover reflected. Julian Cross died 1 month after we met. But in that month, he taught me something death couldn't touch. How to really live. I carry him with me, not as grief, but as gratitude. Not as loss, but as love. And every day, I keep my promise. I live enough for both of us. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.